soldiers of the rising sun are little men, quick and wiry. Their uniforms are slovenly. Their faces, even in the heat of battle, are tawny masks, blank, expressionless. They believe that they have embarked upon a holy war, a war of liberation. It is senseless to seize an empire where wealth remains in the hands of the inhabitants. We must eliminate every element reluctant to cooperate with Japan. This also they firmly believe. And as the United Nations prepare to wipe out for all time the horror now spreading through the continent of Asia, they seek a closer knowledge of their savage enemy, the little men, whose double faces and double minds may well render them the most dangerous foe of all. Through the clouds, the god Izanagi and the goddess Izanami looked down upon the sea, and out of the sea they brought forth the 8 great islands known as Nippon, 8 hardened crusts of earth floating upon the fires within the earth. Across the face of this land, the gods of Japan wrote their double character. From the smoking craters, they drew forth the spirits of storm and drought and earthquake. But in the valleys between, they spread the quiet loveliness of cherry blossom and chrysanthemum. And in this land, they set the Yamato race, seed of the sun and of Amaterasu, the sun goddess. Every member of this race is a member of a single divine family, bound to his ancestors, bound to the Supreme Father, whose figure he has probably never seen, or Tenshi-sama, the Emperor, Son of Heaven, source of radiant peace. Before the shrines of the Shinto faith, the Japanese renews his devotion to the heads of the imperial house, who have ruled him down the ages. Even in heaven, he is taught, the godlike ancestors practice deceit and treachery, as well as good, to achieve their divine ends. And he, their earthly child, must follow their example without question. To the Japanese, even the cherry blossom has a double meaning. Flower of spring, it is also the flower of the warrior samurai. For just as the cherry petals fall in full bloom, so it is the duty of the warrior to lay down his life in the prime of manhood. The samurai has learned to suppress every emotion behind a mask of self-control. Pain and hardship have conquered his spirit. He is one with the steel of his blade, aware of the enemy behind his back, aware of the moment to turn and strike. Yet, as if to compensate for the harsh self-denial imposed by his gods, the Japanese has clothed his daily life in a mantle of charm and poetry. This is the smiling face of a people to whom the design of an embroidery is as precious as the burning loyalty of their tribal faith, to whom the moves of three-dimensional chess are as deserving of study as the sweeping strokes of the warrior's sword. And so, frozen for 20 centuries in a feudal mold, the Yamato race lived on in this strange land, ruled by ghosts at once benevolent and cruel. And over them towered the snowy cone of Fujiyama, eternal mountain, source of the future splendor of Nippon. 1867, the Emperor Meiji and a new Japan. A Japan with the veil of isolation swept back overnight. A Japan swiftly opening its gates to the flood tide of Western thought. Like a thirsty sponge, this new Japan sucked in the knowledge of the civilized world. Education from America, civil law from France, medicine from Germany, trading skill from Britain. Now the tribal spirit which had bound together the ancient clans served to build great modern business trusts. Gigantic combines like those of Mitsui and Mitsubishi, wielding monopoly control in the name of a single family. Forsaking the shrines of their fathers, the Japanese people bowed before the altars of a new god, the almighty Yen, a deity whose symbol was the high collar and whose creed was competition. But behind the smoke of the great industrial cities, the old system remained. The big plants, for all their new equipment, were but the strongholds of a modern medievalism. Their machine shops, air-conditioned dungeons, their 13 million workers, little more than serfs, sweating their 100-hour weeks to the commercial glory of the great family trusts. A century ago, the Japanese shipwright who built a sampan large enough to cross the ocean was put to death by imperial decree. 50 years later, his government was subsidizing him, and by 1937, he had placed his nation third on the world's list of merchant tonnage. Out into the ocean trade routes sailed this new merchant navy, sleek, modern ships moving down the broad blue bay of Tokyo, their holds stuffed with goods and gadgets to be dumped on markets overseas. And so the tin gods of the new Japan gazed upon the mountain of their destiny from the comfort of their easy chairs. And they said it was fulfilled, which was spoken by the prophets, that from peerless Fujiyama would arise a greater splendor for the island empire of Nai Nippon. But the reality was different, for all the bright lights in the movies were but another mask covering the true face of Japan. For those with eyes to see, the ancient demons of storm and lightning danced in the neon signs, and above the nightclubs hovered the spirits of tribe and priest and warrior, ghosts of the old Japan, stronger, deeper than the high-collar gods of the new. He emerged from the officers' clubs of Tokyo. Heideki Tojo, the razor brain, high priest of Japan's savage tribal past. No dust shall becloud our return to the imperial road, and by dust I mean liberalism and the pursuit of personal desires. For years, the agents of the new faith had prepared the way. Through the State Tourist Bureau, they mobilized their spies on a scale which made even the Nazis look like amateurs. They equipped an army with notebook and camera and sent them forth to every land. And so the advance guards of the rising sun spread the rays of their divine mission across the earth. We are coming by the thousand. We are devoting every effort to the overseas development of our culture, to the manifestation of the Japanese spirit among foreign peoples. Southward they moved, to the Malay Peninsula and the oil-soaked islands of the Indies. They noted the locations of the white man's trading posts. They estimated the yield of the rubber plantations and calculated the number of ships needed to carry it away. Their military experts looked upon the heaps of chrome and tin and nickel and bided their time. Co-prosperity, they said, is the art of the possible. Through the ports of the China Sea they came. They offered their friendly services as mediators in a border quarrel between Thailand and Indochina. The dispute was settled, and then the judge assessed the costs. Cooperation with Japan, or else. Up and down the coasts of South America, the red circle ensign of the rising sun appeared. For had not a Japanese statesman said, "Our people have a heaven-sent right to settle those parts of the New World which are climatically healthful and enjoyable." San Diego to Vancouver, we welcomed their young seamen and tried to make them feel at home. They said we smelt of butter, but they swallowed their disgust, for there was work to do. Above all, they wanted souvenirs, picture souvenirs, of harbors, bridges, dockyards. Meanwhile, from capital to capital went the busy feet of Japan's #1 globetrotter and broker in pacts of non-aggression, Yusoki Matsuoka. One of the more voluble of Nippon's diplomats, Matsuoka once let slip a regrettably undiplomatic statement. The mission of the Yamato race, he said, is to prevent humanity from becoming devilish. In the light of this, we cannot afford to copy the Western civilizations which are about to perish. And Stalin laughed and later asked, which is more dangerous, a rumbling Europe or a preparing Japan? And so Japan, friend or ally at one time or another of all the democratic powers, found her true friend among the nations. Assembled in Tokyo's Central Park, the people heard a message from a Führer across the sea. Our races are one in valor and efficiency. We share a lofty view of the state and its mystic ferment in the body politic. They heard the strains of Deutschland über alles, but perhaps significant of mystic ferments yet to come, band and people got out of time. Thus, at last, the double face of Nippon showed itself in its true light. Individually honest and unselfish, collectively treacherous and greedy. And even as they marched to war, they called it co-prosperity. And as the women of Japan renewed their vows before the shrines of Shinto and prayed in all humility to be made worthy of their soldier sons, so year by year their sons came back to them, came back to be raised to godhood by the Son of Heaven himself, but only in such numbers as would not reveal the mounting lists of casualties. But let us today make no mistake. Japan has been at war 11 years. She has lost more than 1 million of her men. But in the hearts of a younger generation, even now being groomed for the rigorous service they will be expected to render to their country, she is striving to implant the belief that their land, and theirs only, is to be the future light of the world. To them, Hideki Tojo issues a special call. We must return to the spirit and morals of old Japan. Everything which conflicts with this ideal must be barred. So in Japan today, the order is simplicity and severity. Every adult, every child must contribute his strength to the strength of a nation which believes its hour of triumph is at hand. All else is wasted time. For workers, schools for farmers, schools for soldiers and sailors. Every profession is a fighting profession. Every profession must learn the high tasks of a master race. For the rulers of Japan believe that their nation has two arms of destiny, one stretching to the heat of the equator, the other reaching to the snows of Siberia and Alaska. Every man must contribute his strength to the strength of Nippon. It was men like these who carried out the Olympic swimming championship at Los Angeles in 1932. We cheered them then for the great athletes they were, but we did not realize the real purpose of their training. For it was expert swimmers like these naval ratings who, on the day after Pearl Harbor, opened the first bridgehead for the Japanese forces at Kotabaru on the coast of the Malay Peninsula. It was midnight, and there was a high sea running, so high that the defending forces considered any attempt to land impossible. But the impossible came true. The darkness concealed the heads bobbing in the waves. Through the thunder of the surf, not a sound could be heard. Many were drowned, but there were always more behind. And next day, they were on their way to Singapore. And just as the Imperial Navy represents devotion to professional duty, so the Army is the militant willpower of the nation. The Japanese soldier comes from a simple home. He's a peasant, a porter, a mill hand. But once in uniform, he partakes of the Emperor's authority and renders homage to the Emperor alone. He is part of a war machine built for use, not for show. Shabby in appearance, frugal in need, harsh in discipline. If you do not make austerity your aim, said one emperor to his soldier children, you will become effeminate and frivolous. You will grow selfish and sordid, so that neither loyalty nor valor will save you from the contempt of the nations. Remember that life is but a candle in the wind. There is no painless exit from this world. This, then, is the face of militant Japan. Some have said it is only an empty mask. Others, that it's the face of a savage. But of this we may be sure, that it is a face schooled through the centuries to hold all life in contempt, believing that duty is weightier than a mountain, while death is lighter than a feather. And just as today, the fighting men of the United Nations are testing the ramparts of Japan in preparation for the great Pacific offensives of tomorrow, so too they are swiftly finding the weakness in the armor of fanaticism worn by the children of the Son of Heaven. The double character of the Jap, they say, will be his own undoing. In his hands are modern weapons, but in his head is a muddled fate. The fate of a man driven into battle by the gods of a ghostly and barbaric past. Strike him with a faith deeper and greater than his own. Strike him with a contempt for death that springs not of superstition, but of fierce conviction, and his spirit will surely break. From every theater of the Pacific, the same answer is coming in. It is coming from the Coral Sea and Midway, from Australia and the beaches of the Solomons. It is coming from the glaciers of Alaska, where Canadians and Americans advance together on the northern road to Tokyo. It is coming from the gallant veterans manning the fronts of China. All speak with a single voice, convince the Japs that we also do not fear to die, and the false mask of arrogance will fall forever from the double face of Nippon.